This is my first YouTube channel video. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Brianna. I'm Brianna McFadden. That's my given name at birth. Was born September 24th, named Baby. And I'm doing this video simply because I had to get to a point where I was comfortable. And today is December 22nd, going into the 23rd. I think it's 1 in the morning, so it's the 23rd in 2019. And I am going to speak right now on basically mental health and just this life that we have. So I want to first enter this with giving people the understanding of what I believe. I believe that there is only one creator. I believe in there being one God, and I believe in him being the God of the heavens and everything of this world. And that's my current standpoint here, out of the years of my life and what I've so far paid attention to about my own life and my own journeys. Now, I also believe that we are spiritual beings living a fleshly or earthly experience. I say that because I look at 2019 as the year of my true spiritual awakening. I chose in the beginning of this year to go on a self-care journey, in part with the establishment of my business, Self Journeys. So basically, this year doing the Self Journeys, it's just like I started with just wanting to have self-care, self-love, self-abundance, self-admiration, self-adoration, self-recognition, self-reflection, self-awareness, self-rejuvenation, and definitely self-judgment. That was the part that I needed the most in this year, I'll admit. When I reached that point of self-judgment, I was able to really see myself from the outside of my body, because it was so many things about myself that I didn't really consider before, and I'm not saying that I now believe that I need to do something extravagantly different about who I am, but I've noticed that in my life I evolve from one thing to the next very rapidly. I had the tendency to be impulsive, to speak before being completely clear. I've been very, and then when it comes to love, I kind of skip through the self-love portion of my journey because I don't think I was really aware on how I could do that. I didn't really have the understanding of how to go about loving myself. And that's why the self-judgment came, because I was the type of person I noticed in this year who really depended on not the validation of other people, but I depended on people that I loved for confirmation sometimes of things that I already knew, whether it be things about myself or just generally the world. It made me look at myself before looking at the world. And when I looked at myself, I noticed, okay, I got married December 28th, 2018 to a person that I felt was amazing. I felt like he had a very good spiritual understanding about life. Just simply because he got me heavily involved with meditation. And that's not to say that I wasn't meditating prior to that, because I was already intending on attending yoga instructions, which I would have then learned anyway, like I did this year. But initially, I had wanted to have it be a thing that we grow together in the spiritual area of life. But I noticed that upon getting married in December, I had also been in the Army since 2012, transportation specialist, or 88 Mike, whatever you want to call it. I was a truck driver, and I was in the National Guard. I was never active duty. I never was deployed, and I only pulled missions in the Guard unit in Maryland when I was in the Guard in Maryland, and in the Guard unit in Georgia when I was in the Guard in Georgia. And I'll say my most extravagant or strenuous missions were having to pull support during the blizzard that was in Maryland, as well as pulling the support for the blizzard that was in Georgia. And just being able to be there for people in the country that I live in is my reasoning for choosing the National Guard as opposed to the reserves, which is the federal component, or the active duty, which is also federal. National Guard is stateside army, stateside military. And a National Guard, just for people who don't know, was the very first component of the military, as well as the Army being the largest branch because it was the first branch of the military. So the National Guard was the very first most branch of the military. And then, came the active duty component, the Navy, the Marines, U.S. Coast Guard, the many other things. So to be clear, that experience is one that I'm proudful of, regardless of what I've learned and unlearned in this year's experience. So straight out of high school, I went to college at Morgan State University. I was working at a hospital called Baltimore Washington Medical Center, which is now under the University of Maryland Medical System. And at that time, Miss Judy was the name of the manager who put me in front of Miss Friend, in which they both hired me under food service. That was my first job coming out of being an employee at McDonald's. McDonald's was my very first, on the books job, but my very first job was at 13 when I was a babysitter. I babysat two young girls of a Caucasian couple that lived in the house behind me when me and my family were living in the Eastern Shore. And that was the first time I ever got paid for doing labor. At 13, I was watching a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old and making $20 an hour. So that gave me the perception of how I was going to go about developing my plan for life, which honestly, being raised Christian, I always felt like Jesus Christ was in my heart. So communication with Jesus was not a thing that I just did every now and again. It was something that I did on a day-to-day basis because in the Christianity religion, that's what you're taught as a child. Well, in the 90s, that's what I was taught. And then, so fast forwarding back to my job at the hospital. So like I said, it was McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's when I was 15, and then I got the job at the hospital, and I was doing both jobs in high school, working at McDonald's and working at the hospital, and doing my best to help my parents. Not saying that my parents needed my help, because my mother was employed for the government, and my father was in the Navy. So I didn't really need to help my parents per se. But my parents were young when they had me, and there was so much that I needed as a child that they just were not in the mind frame to give to me at the time because they were young. And I understand that now, and I don't fault my parents. I really believe that my parents did their best. And I really appreciate my parents because they even know we still are in the midst of building a relationship. So that's where we are right now here in 2019. But it was a lot to get here. And I want to start by saying that a lot of the things that I'm going to be mentioning in my channel are simply me expressing my truth, because I feel like a lot of people don't know that nobody necessarily lives a perfect life. Nobody necessarily has it harder than the next person just because their situation is a little more complex, or because they're lacking a parent, or they're lacking friends or people. People who lived life alone have a certain extent of struggles as well as people that have been surrounded by bounds of people in their life. Because what happens is when you're alone, you get more time to connect with a higher being if you choose to like meditate and pray and connect with the source. But you have to understand that when you aren't exposed to God's truth and understanding his word, it can kind of discourage your understanding of having a belief system that is aligned with what we should be doing and with your purpose. I'm learning personally that I don't want to be so wrapped up in trying to understand the world and understand people and understand things that are completely out of my control. I cannot control how someone views me, and I can't control how someone chooses to live their life, even if it's my little sister and I really desire for her to not do what she's doing. She has to have her own relationship with God and the higher power in order to understand how to step into her own power and purpose on this earth. I do believe that the only true creator there is, the higher creator of us all, created us to be creators. The goal in creating us is so that we are able to do the things that make us feel alive in the world. And having a purpose makes you not feel so empty. Because I know for me, I did do a lot of different jobs. And I definitely was a person who, although I was raised in Christianity, I was always approached by people who would be like, can I read for you? Oh, you have this or that, you're anointed. Or this person will say, oh, somebody put a curse on you. Somebody did that. Somebody did this. So there's so many different like outside things that I wasn't necessarily aware of because I chose to ignore it. Like I just simply just was like, oh, I'm not trying to hear all that, especially because being raised in a Christianity, you're told to believe in that one thing that you're taught in that religion. But you don't get exposure to all of the other beliefs that are in the world. So then you go on and you continue life the way that you know it because of how you were raised and because of the environment you're in. But for me, I was a person who, I guess, when I looked in, I always liked to read things that only enlightened me about what I didn't know. And although my mother didn't necessarily agree with my decision to know and understand other things, it was for my own purposes. Like I feel like confusion is not a thing that God wants us to have. He doesn't want us to have confusion about what to do next, how we're going to eat, how we're going to feed our children, how we're going to feed ourselves, how we're going to pay this bill or that bill, or just that whole mind frame thing. Like it really stems from education, and it stems from just what is given to you as a child. And I believe that God is a God of unity, of peace, of unconditional love, of truth. I do believe that